But when you lose someone, like, it's not actually like, it's not like you actually lose it. Like, you know, they're their own person, and sometimes we have trials that actually do happen to us. So like we get inflicted with, like, you know, like you did with your arm and stuff like that. But a lot of times it's like things that happen to other people, but it directly affects us because we're so involved with them, you know. And it may not necessarily actually, you know, it could be somebody else's trial, but then we get caught up into it, you know. Like a lot of times, you know, families go through trials together and stuff like that. So, now let me ask you guys this question: do you guys think that trials, temptations, and tests are the same thing? What would make them different if you don't think so?
I don't think they're the same thing. I think trials, they could be, I suppose. Trial sounds like a broader category. Trials could be anything from, you know, just accidents that befall you, just to the everyday difficulties of your life. A temptation is something that seems a little more specific and a little more narrow to me, where it is, I mean, obviously this is, and it's specific to the individual. Everybody has different temptations. Everybody is going to have something that, for whatever reason, resonates with their sin nature deeper than it does with other people. And trials, temptations, testing, a period of testing, again, to me, again, that seems like there's I think a trial can sometimes just be the things that happen in life. Testing, the word like that, there's a lot of intention behind it. I would think that, you know, somebody specifically is testing you to see. I mean, you think of a book like Job for an extreme example of testing. So I think that we can differentiate between those three. Though trials, I suppose, if you want to get, you know, if you want to be liberal with it, trial could be a broad categorization of those other two. But I think you can differentiate between the three.
But I think you work through those things. It's all about, you know, working through various situations, trusting in God, producing a greater amount of faith, you know, and learning to do so, as well as just building character. I think all of those things do similar things. Obviously, it's in different, like, places in your heart and in your life, but it's still, you know, they can overlap, I think.
I think it's interesting because, you know, I agree with everything you say, Cameron. At the same time, I think when you're going through a trial, it's like you said, like, going through trials, a lot of it is refining and trying to get you to a place of surrender and trust God. Like, the temptation during a trial is always, like, to not trust God. Like, it's the temptation to not trust God. So in that way, I think they're always kind of yoked in a little bit, like a trial and temptation. But I agree, like, temptations can be parts of trials. But, you know, then you can also have a temptation that has nothing to do with a trial. You know, like, if you're, you know, if you were an alcoholic for, you know, 20 years, and then now it's been 20 years and you haven't been an alcoholic, like, you're good, you're sober, you're not really dealing with it, but there's always the temptation in some way to go back to alcohol, you know. So, but what do you guys think about, Pastor one time said this, and it's like, it's kind of always stuck with me. I don't know if it's scriptural or not. Maybe you guys could provide some insight if you think it is or not, but you know, this is one thing that's always tried to kind of help me, like when I go through a trial or a test, or, you know, whatever you want to call it. God only tests those he trusts. God tests those that he trusts. What do you think about that?
Well, if we can go back to the book of Job here again. If you look at the satanic dialogue preceding Job's trials, if I remember correctly, God is almost bragging about my servant Job, and then Satan says, "Oh, I bet I can get him to. I'll make him crack. I'll kill his family. I'll do it." And God basically says, "No, no, no." And then, from what we can gather from the text, steps back and allows the devil free reign on this man's life for a season. And I think we can pretty much conclude that God has quite a bit of faith and trust in his servant Job here, and you know, for a while, Job pays a heavy price for that trust.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy book. I struggle deeply with the book of Job.
Really?
And I find, I mean, that doesn't mean that I don't. No, I mean, I won't make any. Yeah, I struggle deeply with the book of Job, and the ending is, I love it. I think it's an amazing book, but it ends on it doesn't give you easy answers. The ending is basically, I am God. Where were you when I did all this? Where were you when I created the foundations of the world?
Yeah.
So your very question to me, trying to put me in the hot seat is your whole understanding is wrong, Job. So it's a frightening book to me in many ways, but I mean, if you look at that, I guess.
Because sometimes there could be like kind of no rhyme or reason to why we could never grasp why something may be happening to us, and
sure, yeah.
in the end, like I think we're going to talk about trials and stuff. I think we'll see that most of the time we can kind of see how it helped us, how things helped us, but we don't ever necessarily know like why God chose to put us through something.
And yeah, I think sometimes our obsession with trying to find or trying to give people who are in the grieving process a why answer is sometimes a bad thing. I don't think it's always good.
Well, I mean, we have friends, Ange and Ross, who just lost a baby for the second time, miscarriage, right before her 8-week appointment and everything. And like through our conversations over the last 2 weeks has been very interesting because like you said, like there is no rhyme or reason as to why, and they've been doing all this genetic testing, and you know, she had an extra chromosome in a weird place that caused the baby to abort itself because it would have been, you know, born with defects. They were able to find that out, but like obviously there's a plan there that is far greater than our comprehension and understanding. But no, let me finish. And then she just had a friend, a very close college friend, who's going through the same exact thing. And like obviously God allows us to have those things and puts people in our life so that we can help them through that. But there's still never, like you said, there's never an easy answer. But knowing that we're able to walk through other fellow believers, brothers, sisters, in their trials and in the hardships, like,
yep.
I mean, that, I think that should count for something.
Of course it does.
It's hard, but I mean,
I just think emphatically what doesn't need to happen. I understand why people feel an obligation. When there's grief, people feel like they have to say something, but you don't be there for the person. Listen to them.
Yeah.
Just be with them.
That's what I mean.
But no, and I know you're not saying this. Don't offer them some highfalutin explanation of how this fits into an overall purpose necessarily. I don't always think that that's a good thing to do. I mean, I know C.S. Lewis, when he lost his wife Joy, I mean, just said, don't talk to me about higher purposes. This is a bloody mess, and that's all there is to it. And that's what it is. Sometimes it's okay to say, this is a horrible thing that happened. And I think, I mean, just remember the verse where, you know, Lazarus dies. That the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. Why did he weep? He foreknew that he was gonna bring him back from the dead, and he believed in the resurrection and the life ultimately. And yet, that is such an encouraging verse, because that tells me that Jesus identifies profoundly with our own pain and suffering, to the extent that he will weep with us, even though he knows in the end death is conquered. That's really staggering fact right there, I think.
Like this past week, I had a conversation with someone, and they said, you know, I truly believe that as believers, our purpose is to be a blessing to others. Like, that is what we're called to do, is to be a blessing to people. And at first I thought, like, that's the weirdest thing anyone's ever said to me, but
Was it tempting though?
No. But I've really been thinking about that, and I think that it really aligns with what you're both saying, is like sometimes you have to be like empathetic, and sometimes you have to be, you know, sympathetic, but at the same time, like, what is a way that you can be a blessing to that person? And maybe you don't see the blessing in your life or what you're going through or what that person's going through, but what is a way that you can be a blessing to someone else? And maybe God is using a trial, test, or temptation so you can help someone else, but maybe he's just using it so like you can be empathetic to someone else. And like that thought process really challenged me. Yes, they are. They're in there wrestling. I'm gonna flip out.
All right, I'm gonna